For a number of years, screen door effect was just something we had to put up with in virtual reality. Now, luckily, we have the choice of headsets that not only give us high resolution, but pretty much eliminate the screen door effect. Now, if you're looking to get into PC VR gaming now, you really want to be going with a high resolution headset that does just that. Now, I'm not saying there isn't a reason to still consider the older headsets. Maybe you specifically want OLED, or you want a really high refresh rate like on the Index, or you just find a good deal on an older headset. But if you're looking to get into high-end PC VR gaming, you want that higher resolution, and really you're looking at the Reverb G2, the Vive Pro 2, or the Pimax 8K or 8KX. Now, before I get into my little review and talk about my customer service experience of the Pimax 8KX, I want to just talk about what screen door is, because some people say, well, I can still see the screen door effect on these high resolution headsets. Now, we know that the screen door is the lines like between the pixels, you know, and it's like you're looking into your virtual reality world through a screen door, and that's always been the case in the past. But now, when people say they can still see SDE, that's not really the case. If you stop and you focus, even in the 8KX, you can see the screen door. You can see the light if you really stop and look for it. But that's not screen door effect, because you're just looking at the screen door. Screen door effect is looking through the door into the VR world. You can't really do that with these headsets. When you're looking into the VR world, you don't really see the screen door. I hope that makes sense. In the past, you could see it no matter what. You're looking into the world, the screen door's always apparent. Now, it's not really. But if you bring your vision in and just look for it, you might see it. But I hope that explains something. Of course, that's not to say it's totally gone. Just for all intents and purposes it is. So if you jumped into a Vario 3, for example, and then back into like an 8KX, maybe you would be like, oh, okay, no, I can clearly see there is a bit of screen door going on. But by the same token, if you play on an older headset like a Vive Pro or an Index even, and then jump into one of these ones, then it's basically gone. Okay. So anyway, let's talk about the 8KX. Well, first let me mention I've used all three: the G2, the Vive Pro 2, and the 8KX. The G2 I used for quite a while. Great headset, brilliant headset. And I've got to say, it's still the most comfortable for me. Fantastically comfortable. The audio, great, you know. Not for me so much because I'm in this motion seat, which is very noisy. I prefer on the ear earphones. But the G2, and at the price you can get it, if you can get hold of it, which you can't really at the moment, it's still a great headset. And if you're using it like I am, primarily for simming, this is really talking about using headsets for simming or seated games. So whether that's flight sims, driving sims, or playing stuff like I Expect You to Die or Demio, whatever. For everything else, I use an Oculus Quest 2 for room scale, for wireless gaming. So yeah, the G2 still a great choice. The Vive Pro 2, now I was really looking forward to it because, you know, I had the Vive and the Vive Pro before it and I loved them. And the Vive Pro 2, I know a lot of people were disappointed with the announcement, but I still was looking forward to it. And when I finally got it, it's had a lot of problems at launch. I'm sure there's lots of people that have a great headset. Mine had annoying lines, a firmware update got rid of that. But then it suffered from pixel inversion, which is a known thing with LCD panels, and it meant that when I moved my head I could see vertical lines appear, like vertical screen door effect of what it looked like, and when you stop they go away. The Vive had it, the Index had it for a lot of people initially, and they got rid of it by something called column correction. I don't know exactly how that works, but they pretty much got rid of it. Vive have, just for all intents and purposes, ignored the problem. I guess not enough people have got it. They won't respond to questions about it on their forum or on Reddit. They're just ignoring people. So I had that problem, which in the end is what got me to send it back, get a refund, which I'm still waiting for, and consider something else, which is how I got the 8KX. But of course I could have just gone ahead and got another Vive Pro 2, but the reason I didn't is because I wasn't overly impressed with it. The field of view jump, is noticeably wider, but not a real big jump. And going from a Vive Pro with the lens mod, which if you've got Vive Pro, absolutely do the lens mod. Oh my god, it was just a jump back in clarity, and the rings, the god rays, awful glare, and just yes, the loss of clarity. The rings were back, and like I'm sure you've seen on a lot of videos, it's a widescreen view rather than it's narrow. Well, the vertical field of view is roughly the same, I guess, as in the G2, but it just feels narrower because it's widened up here. So I wasn't overly impressed with it. And after using the G2 for so long, the comfort level of the Vive Pro just isn't what I remembered it being. But so for the money, I already had the base stations, I got index controllers, so I didn't have to buy all that stuff. But for the money, for me, no, I wasn't overly impressed. So anyway, let's move on to my 8KX review. Okay, so first off, it is a lot of money. If you've got to fork out for the whole kit, get the base stations, get controllers, you're looking on for the best part of $2,000 with VAT and stuff. You're getting up there, it's really high. For me, I already had the base stations and the controllers, so the headset itself was around 1,350 or something, including VAT or whatnot. But it only comes with like a 4.5 meter cable. I mean, clearly this headset isn't intended for room scale games. And it's going to be used mainly for simmers and seated play, sure, but that's still not really long enough cable. Like for me, my computer's over there, right, and I run the cable along the ceiling and down and drops here, and I can place that here or play at my computer, and the cable's not a problem. It doesn't go along the floor, my cat can't eat it, whatever. I couldn't get close to that. I could barely make it to my rig, and it's not far from my computer. So you've got to consider that you will probably have to buy the 6 meter, the longer fibre optic cable, and that's not cheap. That's like 120. With VAT, you're looking at basically getting on 150 quid, just for a cable, and you're probably going to need it. Now, it's a nice cable, don't get me wrong, it's more flexible, it's lighter, it only needs one USB port, which is a good thing, instead of the 2 that the original needs. So yeah, factor that in. So consider the headset being maybe 1,500, just for the headset. Right, so with that out of the way, let's talk about the headset itself. There's 2 reasons why I didn't get this back when it initially came out, why I put off getting this headset. One was hearing a lot of horror stories about Pimax themselves, about their customer service, and just people just saying avoid them at all costs. I've seen a lot more positive stuff about them lately, so that sort of negated that a little bit, and I'll go into that at the end when I talk about my customer service experience. And the second thing being distortion. A lot of people talk about distortion in this headset, and what I thought that meant was really at the sides, but no, what it really is talking about sort of the geometry of the world distorting as you look around. The best way to explain it, well, if you've used a Vive Pro with the lens mod, if you haven't got it on your face right, you might experience some distortion. If you get that put on your face right, that'll be gone. So what it is, and it is there, but it's so minor, really. It's not a negative in it. Let me say I love this headset. It's the best headset I've had. It's fantastic. I wish I'd bought it sooner. The distortion is there. Isn't a problem, and you won't see it in games. In fact, so if I try and explain it, if you're playing Demio, for example, that might be the only game you'll ever notice it in, because you're looking at the rectangle, like geometric shape, okay, and especially if you tilt to be more comfortable. There's no background. It's a black background with this geometric shape. So when you look around, the lines, the edges might not be 100% flat. They might have a slight curve to them. Or as you move around the headset, you might see, it's hard to explain. Like if you're in flight sim, you might see the gap increase or decrease in between, say, the stick and yourself. It's really hard to explain, but all you have to take away from it is it's not really a negative. It's really a low issue. And once you're in game, honestly, it's gone. It's not a problem to even worry about. Now, talking about the edges, some games, so you've got small, medium and large FOV, like 120, 150 and 200. And the 120 on small, so like I'm running flight sim on small, and that's still bigger. It feels bigger. I'm sure it is bigger than pretty much any other headset. People say it's like the Index, but coming from a G2 user, it's massive. And then the 150 is what I play most games on. It's phenomenal. And then the large, the 200, a lot of games that doesn't work very well with at the edges. It is not very neat at the edges. 150 pretty much is great for anything. But iRacing, playing that on the largest field of view, 100% super sampling with the graphics pretty much on full everything. Yeah, I've got a 3090, fair enough. But it runs incredibly well on a full grid of cars. That is amazing. That's the best game I've played on the 200 degree field of view. So yeah, some games don't like the extra bit though on the if you go to 200. Of course, another thing you've probably heard about is parallel projection. Unfortunately, because of the canted lenses, some games need parallel projection on. Quite a few sims do, like Microsoft Flight Sim does, Automobilista 2 does. And what that does, without it, you'll get weird stuff going on, culling at the edges, things popping in and out. It just is a mess. You'll know if you need it. But when you turn it on, you lose 30% people have recorded. I've just taken that number from what other people have said. But basically, you lose a heap of performance. A big jump in performance loss. That's why Flight Sim I play on small FOV and super sampling. I put down to 65, 70, which is what I did in the G2, which is still very crisp and clear. You know, when you talk about these headsets and you're talking about using 50, 60, 70% super sampling, some people in comments are like, why are you doing that? What's the point in having this high resolution headset? Well, no, the point is you can go 50%, and 50% is still a fantastic resolution. You might have a computer that can only go at 50%. Well, that's fine, you're future-proofed. In the future, you can go up even higher when you've got a better graphics card. But obviously, run as high as you can run it with your computer. But if you've got to go lower. It still looks amazing. You're still not going to have the screen door effect, just because you're losing some resolution. So yeah, that is an unfortunate thing we have to deal with. I believe developers can, adapt their game engine to negate the need for parallel projection, and hopefully more devs will do that. But for now, it's just something we've got to live with, and it's not been anywhere near as bad as a problem I thought it would be. And so one reason I decided to take the plunge was seeing a video by a VR Flight Sim guy who was playing Microsoft Flight Sim. He said, yeah, he got it smooth, running it in small mode, and he actually had motion smoothing on. I don't use that. I hate the warping that goes on. I prefer slightly not as smooth, although most situations it is unless you're in a big city, over the warping, but that's just a personal preference for me. But yeah, parallel projection hasn't been as big an issue as I thought it would be, and it's a lot easier to deal with because of the great software that Pimax have made, the Pimax experience. I didn't really know a lot about it before I got the headset. I was using Pytool for a while, which is just, the Windows application. But now if you use the Pimax experience in VR, The key thing being, as a simmer, I don't use the controllers most of the time. You can use the mouse. You can't do that with the dashboard in Steam VR, but the Pimax experience you can, and you can just set profiles for any game you play. Whether you want motion smoothing on or off, or most importantly, whether you want parallel projection on or off. So you don't have to remember which games need it and don't. You just set a profile for each game, run it, and then it will turn on parallel projection whether you need it or not. Fantastic. And the fact you can use the mouse and change everything is brilliant. And along the same lines in Pimax experience, you can change the backlighting, the brightness, the contrast. The backlighting, when you initially install it, is set at 50. I don't know why. You whack it up to 100. Obviously, whack it to 100. Even on the profiles that are automatically applied to some games, if you use like the cloud profiles, that the backlighting's always on 100. Put it up there. Put that on 100. Lower the brightness 1 or 2, and then put the contrast up 1 or 2 in general, and you'll get a fantastic picture. But yeah, there are cloud profiles for a lot of the games where people have found the best settings. But generally, backlight 100, brightness drop a couple, contrast raise 1 or 2. Fiddle with you for yourself. But yeah, and you can bring up test patterns, test images to where you got it. You can change the RGB, each separate channel. All this stuff is pretty awesome, and you can again set all that per game if you really want. Or you can just set once, job done, and leave it as. So you can do as much or as little as you need to do. What else do I need to waffle on about? This is some waffle. Comfort wise, it's a pretty comfortable headset. It's not G2 level of comfort. There are mods you can do. I know there's a weighted pack to put on the back because it obviously is front heavy. I mean, look at the size of this thing. But the biggest thing, I think, if you want to get this on and comfortable, is not underestimating how far down the back of your head this needs to go. Now, to get it on, for example, what I do, I'll just put it on my face where it's comfortable, push it in on the forehead, and pull this down. And look, these are over the ears now. Initially, these wouldn't reach anywhere near my ears, well, because this has got to be a lot lower. I could even have it lower still. And if you've gone too far down the back of your head, because you'll get light under here. But as long as you haven't got light under here and it's not pulling down on your nose, you're in about the right spot. And it is, pretty darn comfortable. Got to be honest. But it is front heavy. It's a heavy headset. And another reason I think this wouldn't be really applicable for room scale games is you want to be moving around fast. Because it does. There's a bit of momentum to it once you get going. But yeah, it is a pretty darn comfortable headset. It's a shame it's not got the elasticated thing like, say, the G2's got. I think all headsets should have that. Easy to pull on and off, but it's not hard. I can just pull it off. I went for the KD Mass option, which basically is these, instead of audio coming out of the headset here, like on the Quest 2, for example. You're not going to want that, are you? You can use your own headset, whether you've got a wireless one or plug them in. I went specifically for this because I don't want another layer of stuff to put on. It's something I loved about the Vive Pro. So I specifically went for these. And you can have them as speakers or put on the ear cup, which I put on, which, deadens the sound of my motion seat and whatnot. And the sound is pretty good. I like it. I don't have a problem with it. Coming from, say, the G2 to this, in general, the sound seems good on both. I like the sound. There's not a lot to say on that. Not an audio file. It sounds pretty decent. And the ear cups do a pretty good job of blocking out the sound. They're not as adjustable as the Vive Pro. They go up and down and like that, but that's it. They don't rotate at all to fit the contours of your however your head is, and they don't flip out. But minor issues, On the headset itself, it's got a few buttons. I like this, so literally I'll just hold that button on, it will go green and it will turn on, and Pimax Sprint will come up, and that's it. It doesn't turn on your base stations on or off. I have my base stations plugged into Wi-Fi plugs, and then I've just got on my Stream Deck or whatever, I just press a button and that will turn on my base stations, or I can ask Google to do it. But there is an app. There's even an app someone's done you can get and put it on your phone to turn your base stations on or off. So there's ways of doing that. And the controllers, just turn them on with the buttons. But they'll turn them off themselves once you disconnect. Once I turn this off and turn the base stations off, so that's not an issue. So yeah, it's nice having that. It's got volume control on there. IPD adjustment down here. Now here's a slight thing with the IPD. So my IPD seems to be, my comfort area in games in VR is about 63. The lowest I can get this is just over 60, and I've got to have it there because it seems like, if you see Niels Heusinkveld, he talked about the centre of his vision being slightly blurrier than just outside of it. So you got the sweet spot, and he said right in the middle it was slightly blurry, and I think that's because the lenses are a bit wider than they should be. So if I've got the headset on and I'm looking dead ahead at something, if I move the headset slightly, then with my left eye things crisp up a little bit. I've got a crap right eye. My right eye is irrelevant. It provides 3D, but that's about it, no detail. So the most crisp bit is just outside. That's why there's a thing called extreme IPD bond. People take this apart and cut down and file down bits of plastic and stuff so they can move the lenses in even more. Now, it sounds like a huge a huge negative point I'm making, and it is a stupid part of the design and that, but it's not, because it's still so sharp where it is. It's just the fact of knowing if I just do that, it's a tiny bit sharper is annoying. But in practical terms, it doesn't really mean anything. I'm looking around all the time and stuff anyway, and it's still very sharp where I am looking. It's just something I've noticed, other people have obviously noticed, and yeah, if you've got a really low IPD, then maybe it'll be even more of a problem. If you've got a really high IPD, I suppose, you know, it's not really going to be an issue at all, because you can put it a lot lower than your IPD is. Anyway, so I've tried to explain that as best I can. Oh, and another thing I just remembered, sorry, this isn't structured, I don't script stuff or whatever, I'm just waffling on. Talking about the 200 field of view, saying iRacing, when I first was going at 200 field of view, I could see like a black bit here. Now if you see that, that's just you haven't got it on right. That wasn't, it was too far out that way. You know, I had to move it in. You move it till there's no sort of weird darker area on both sides, and then it's crystal clear, and then it's beautiful. It's a good way of just indicating you've not got it on right. Probably as you've put the back down, you've not put it down the middle of your head, you've pulled it a little bit one way or the other. Anyway, that's just a little point for getting it on your face correctly. So yeah, there's not really a lot more to say. Look, this is a fantastic headset. It's a lot of money, regardless of if you've already got controllers or base stations. It's a lot of money, but if you're serious about PC VR, simming, seated gaming, then it's something to consider. I think it's the best headset you can get at the moment, and probably will be for some time to come, because the FOV cannot be understated how much of an impact that is on immersion, and you're mixing that with the high resolution is fantastic. Distortion is nothing to worry about in my mind. It's basically not there when you're playing. So yeah, all in all, brilliant headset. I should have gone it sooner. Now, I said I was going to talk about customer service, because I've seen a lot of stuff in the past that Pimax customer service is awful. We've all seen it, but I think they've taken that on board. and they've improved things because I've seen a lot of positivity now. For me, what I had was, now bear in mind I sent the Vive Pro 2 back because of pixel inversion, seeing vertical lines when I move my head. When I got this, I had the same thing. I couldn't believe it. You know, I'm thinking, it can't be my computer, you know, this is a panel problem. And I saw it on this, and it wasn't as bad, nowhere near as bad as the Vive Pro 2 was. You know, that was unbearable. But the fact that I could just see it, and I couldn't, once I've seen it once, you can't unsee it, and my eyes would just focus on it. Contacted their customer service on the 19th, and they responded straight away. We had an email conversation back and forward, and basically that was on the 19th. On the 21st of July, that problem is gone. Totally gone. So basically we had a conversation back and forth. I explained what it was. I showed a picture of what it was. I've downloaded a picture, and yeah, he went back and forward, said he spoke to engineers and stuff, and I mentioned someone online had used something called PyShell back in the past to fix it, and he said that didn't work on this headset. Anyway, yeah, he came back and said, right, okay, I've spoken to the engineers and I've got a firmware version and a PyShell version that will work with the 8KX. And basically, it ended up being that once you're using those with PyShell, pressing up and down volume buttons, I could make the pixel version get worse or go away and then get worse again the other side. So you just went back and forward until you find the bit where there's just no pixel version, just using the volume buttons, and you save it, job done. And that was within 2 days of contacting them, you know, so they'd actually done something to fix it. Vive, they're like usual stuff, unplug everything, drivers and all that, you know, stuff that you know isn't going to work, and then they just send it back. But if you specifically try to ask them, okay, is this a hardware problem, a software problem, are you going to fix it, is there a timeline, they just ignore it all, nothing. So my experience of Pimax customer support, and alright, it's only one time I've needed to speak to them, but it's a 1-for-1, 100% success rate. It was fantastic. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say. So the two things that were holding me back was customer support. I'm not worried about that now at all, and distortion, and that's something I shouldn't have been worrying about, really. I was worried. That's not a problem at all. So yeah, that's really it. Is that a review? It's sort of a review. It's a waffle on. The review is excellent. It's a great headset. I prefer it over the G2, prefer it over the Vive Pro 2, and all the headsets I've had in the past. So yeah, it's probably no one still watching this by now, but if you are and you've got any questions, or there's anything you want me to try, or anything you want to see with an 8KX, let me know. And if you've got any questions, put them in the comments and I'll always answer if I can. But for now, that'll do it. I'll see you later. Cheers.